brilliant move amid heightened military tensions between the two countries in eastern Ladakh. We're talking about India and China. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh is expected to meet his Chinese counterpart. It's likely to take place, the meeting, the Chinese counterpart Wei Penghe, on the sidelines of the SCO summit. Well, this after China reportedly reached out to India. Meanwhile, India continues to maintain a very hard stance on China's attempts to disrupt status quo. And on the news night tonight, we talk about India's hard talk, India's tough stance on terror at the SCO summit, and also keep an eye on the meeting between our Raksha Mantri and his Chinese counterpart on the sidelines of SCO. I'm Sakal Bhatt. First up, the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi asks IPS probationers to prioritize making police stations as social centres of trust. Interacting with IPS probationers after Dikshant Parade ceremony at Hyderabad, Prime Minister says humane face of police was at forefront during COVID-19 pandemic. Prime Minister says yoga and pranayam are good for all those working under stress. Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh, who is on a 3-day visit to Russia, held meeting with Russian Defense Minister General Sergei Shoigu in Moscow. Appreciating India's concern on terror, Russia has assured India it will not provide weapons to Pakistan. The meeting covered a broad range of areas of cooperation, including defense and strategic cooperation between the two countries. Army Chief concludes his Ladakh visit and appreciates the high morale and standards of professionalism exhibited by Indian Army in safeguarding territorial integrity. Says situation along LAC is slightly tense, urges troops to remain vigilant and maintain high order of operational readiness. Army Chief concludes his Ladakh visit and appreciates the high morale and standards of professionalism exhibited by Indian Army in safeguarding territorial integrity. Says situation along LAC is slightly tensed, urges troops to remain vigilant and maintain high order of operational readiness. Meanwhile, India says it can't be business as usual. Foreign Secretary says that bilateral relations will be effective. In other news, Supreme Court rejects review petition of 6 opposition ruled states against the court's August 17 order allowing National Test Agency to hold NEET and JEE exams in September. Says exams will go ahead on the dates allotted. Narcotics Control Bureau detains actor Riya Chakravarti's brother Shawik Chakravarti and Sushant Singh Rajput's former manager Samuel Miranda for questioning, conducts raids at Riya, Shawik and Miranda's residences. Pakistan continues with its nefarious designs to support terrorism. Security forces gunned down 3 terrorists in Pattan area of Baramulla district of Kashmir. Search operations are underway. And with high number of patients getting cured, India's total recovery surpassed 30 lakh with over 77% recovery rate. Case fatality rate further goes down to 1.74%. Over 11.70 lakh tests done in 2 consecutive days, with total tests nearing 4.7 crores. And now for the top stories in detail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi today reached out to IPS probationers during the Dikshant Parade event through video conference. Prime Minister spoke on issue of mental stress related to jobs, to importance of yoga. And one of the important messages from the Prime Minister's interaction was the emphasis on the role of public representation and also respecting public representatives. Prime Minister said will actually mean the respect of the democratic processes, with the message to the IPS probationers that they should work in making police stations as social centres of trust. Here's a report.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with IPS probationers during the Dikshant Parade event at the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel National Police Academy via video conferencing. He said that it is very important that the IPS probationers be proud of their uniform instead of flexing power out of it. Urging the probationers to show compassion on the general public, Prime Minister stressed on winning the hearts of the people through compassion rather than controlling them through fear.
अगर आप प्रभाव पैदा करेंगे तो उसकी उम्र बहुत कम होती है, लेकिन प्रेम का सेतु जोड़ेंगे तो आप रिटायर्ड हो जाएंगे तब भी जहां आपकी पहली ड्यूटी रही होगी वहां के लोग आपको याद करेंगे कि 20 साल पहले ऐसा एक नौजवान अफसर हमारे यहाँ आया था, भाषा तो नहीं जानता था लेकिन जो उसका व्यवहार था लोगों के दिलों को जीत लिया था। आप एक बार जन सामान्य के दिल को जीत लेंगे, बदल जाएगा।
Prime Minister appreciated that the human side of police came to fore during the COVID-19 pandemic. He said that in the last few years, the way NDRF and SDRF have performed during the disaster has brought about a new recognition to the police service.
Through NDRF, through SDRF, आप पूरी पुलिस बेड़े की एक नई छवि, नई पहचान आज देश में बन रही है। हम गर्व के साथ आज देश कह रहा है कि देखिए भाई, इस संकट की घड़ी में पहुंच गए, इमारत गिर गई, लोग दबे थे, पहुंच गए, उन्होंने निकाला लोगों को। मैं चाहूंगा कि ऐसे अनेक ऐसे क्षेत्र हैं जिसमें आप लीडरशिप दे सकते हैं।
Prime Minister also mentioned the Mission Karmyogi, which was launched 2 days ago. He termed it as a major reform and a shift from rule-based approach to rule-based approach. Prime Minister also underlined the immense importance of fitness for the police officers.
आप अपने स्वास्थ्य की जितनी चिंता करें, अपने साथियों को हमेशा पूछते रहिए, स्वास्थ्य का कैसा है, एक्सरसाइज करते हो नहीं करते हो, वेट कंट्रोल रखते हो नहीं रखते हो, मेडिकल चेकअप कराते हो नहीं कराते हो। इन सारी चीजों पर बल दीजिए, क्योंकि आपका क्षेत्र ऐसा है कि जिसमें फिजिकल फिटनेस सिर्फ यूनिफॉर्म में अच्छे दिखने के लिए नहीं है, आपकी ड्यूटी ऐसी है कि आपको इसको करना पड़ेगा।
Prime Minister urged the probationers to keep in mind the verse of the Gita that people follow the examples set by the great ones.
शास्त्रों में कहा गया है कि यत यत आचरति श्रेष्ठः, यत यत आचरति श्रेष्ठः तत् तत् एव इतरः जनः, स यत प्रमाणम कुरुते लोकः तत् अनुवर्तते। अर्थात श्रेष्ठ लोग जिस तरह का आचरण दिखाते हैं, बाकी लोग भी वैसा ही आचरण करते हैं। मुझे विश्वास है कि आप उस श्रेष्ठ जनों की श्रेणी में हैं, आप उस श्रेष्ठता को सिद्ध करने की श्रेणी में हैं। आपको एक अवसर मिला है, साथ साथ एक जिम्मेवारी मिली है।
During his interaction, Prime Minister also urged the probationers to use technology to the maximum possible extent while not forgetting the importance of the ground level intelligence inputs. He also advised the probationers to develop the skill to identify the chaff out of the grain so that they keep out unnecessary things from clogging their decision making. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
In fact, Prime Minister interacted with young IPS probationers belonging to different parts of the country, and it indeed turned out to be a heartwarming interaction. Here are a few excerpts of Prime Minister's interaction with the IPS probationers in the same event.
Shared many of his own public life experiences. Some of the officers also talked about their own experiences during the corona pandemic times.
कोरोना एक ऐसी असाधारण चुनौती थी जिसने हमें भी और बाकी सभी फ्रंटलाइन वॉरियर्स को एक काफी बड़ी चुनौती दी। सर, मैं खुद भी संक्रमित हुआ और बहुत शुरुआत के दिनों में, और भाग्यशाली रहा कि सकुशल वापस आ पाया। सर, मेरे फोर्स के कई लोग ऐसे थे हमारे जो इतने भाग्यशाली नहीं थे, ना अपने घर लौट पाए। सर, उसमें एक अहम चीज जो मुझे समझ में आई कि अगर हमें कुछ हो जाएगा तो उसके बाद सरकार तथा पुलिस विभाग हमारे परिवार की देखभाल करेगा।
कोरोना आउटब्रेक के बाद सर, जब भारत सरकार ने मूवमेंट ऑफ स्ट्रैंडेड पैसेंजर्स का गाइडलाइंस निकाला था, तब मुझे रिपोर्ट किया गया था कोकराझार में, आसाम बंगाल बॉर्डर में, लोगों के मूवमेंट को मैनेज करने के लिए। सर, वहाँ पे कुछ चैलेंजेस जो हमने फेस किए हैं, लोग हजारों किलोमीटर साइकिल से चल के वहाँ आते थे, तो वहाँ पे हमने काफ़ी अच्छी सर्विस प्रोवाइड की थी, लोगों को खाना पहुँचाया था, जो चल के आए थे उनको बसेस में रेस्पेक्टिव रीजनल ट्रेनिंग सेंटर्स में हमने भेजा था.
Prime Minister said that the humane side of the police force came to fore during the COVID-19 pandemic.
कोरोना के कालखंड में देश के हर कोने में खाकी वर्दी के लोग जब गीत गाते हैं, गीतों के द्वारा लोगों को शिक्षित करने का प्रयास करते हैं, खाकी वर्दी के लोग फुटपाथ पर बैठे हुए लोगों को खाना पहुंचा रहे हैं, पानी पहुंचा रहे हैं, खुद रिस्क लेकर के कोरोना के मरीज को ले जाते हैं, ये दृश्य देश ने देखे हैं. एक मानवीय चेहरा हमारी खाकी वर्दी का लोगों के मन में स्थिर हो चुका है.
An IPS officer stationed in Valsad, Gujarat, also shared his experiences of working through the tough times of corona pandemic-induced lockdown.
वलसाड एक प्रमुख औद्योगिक केंद्र है, तो बहुत सारे माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स वहां रहते थे सर. तो इन माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स को ना सिर्फ स्वास्थ्य संबंधी चुनौतियों का सामना करना पड़ा था, बल्कि इनको बेरोजगारी और भूखमरी का भी संकट इन पर आया था. इंडिविजुअल डोनर को एक एक एरिया असाइन करके टोटल 30,000 परिवारों को 2 महीने से भी ज्यादा समय के लिए उनके डोर स्टेप पे राशन की डिलीवरी करी थी सर. वलसाड से टोटल 61,000 माइग्रेंट्स को उनके घर भेजा गया था, जिनमें पुलिस ने भारतीय रेल और प्रशासन की बाकी इकाइयों के साथ बहुत ही कोऑर्डिनेशन के साथ काम किया था.
One female IPS officer recounted her experiences during her tenure in Jammu and Kashmir.
सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस सर एक जुनैद सहराई नामक आतंकवादी को काफी लंबे समय से पकड़ने का प्रयास कर रही थी. जुनैद हिजबुल मुजाहिदीन में कमांडर था और वैली में रिक्रूटमेंट का कार्यभार संभालता था. सर 18 मई को जम्मू कश्मीर पुलिस के स्पेशल ऑपरेशन ग्रुप को यह खबर मिली कि वो अपने एक आतंकी साथी के साथ किसी समर्थक के घर पे था. तो तुरंत ही पुलिस, एसओजी और सीआरपीएफ की एक टीम ने योजना बनाकर घर को घेरा और आतंकियों को पकड़ने की कोशिश की. जैसे ही सर हम घर के अंदर गए, आतंकियों ने हमारे ऊपर फायरिंग शुरू की, जिसमें हमारा एक जवान भी घायल हो गया. सर पर्सनली मेरे लिए काफी भयभीत करने वाला क्षण था, बट जैसा कि हमारे जवान और टीम ने साहस दिखाया, ना कि सिर्फ घायल जवान को सुरक्षित स्थान पे पहुंचाया, बल्कि ऑपरेशन को तब तक चालू रखा जब तक हमने दोनों टेररिस्ट को न्यूट्रलाइज नहीं किया.
Prime Minister replied and said that women police personnel can engage with mothers of children in Jammu and Kashmir to prevent the youngsters from taking the wrong path.
मैं आपसे आग्रह करूंगा कि जहां की आपकी ड्यूटी लगे, आप वहां की जो बहनें हैं उनके छोटे छोटे समूह बनाइए, 10-10 का, 5-5 का, 10 का, 15 का, और जिनके पास रूटीन में वो टेक्सटाइल से संबंधित कुछ न कुछ काम करते हैं, और जो आपके टेक्सटाइल के अनुभव है और वे परंपरागत रूप से जिस टेक्सटाइल से जुड़े हुए हैं, इन दोनों को जोड़ने का प्रयास कीजिए. उनको मॉडर्न डिजाइनिंग सिखाइए. जो बच्चे गलत रास्ते पर चले जाते हैं उनको पहले से रोकने की दिशा में अब हमें काम करना है, और वो काम महिला पुलिस अफसरों से बहुत अच्छा हो सकता है.
Prime Minister Modi heaped praise on the people of Kashmir, saying that they are lovely people and have special ability to learn new things. Replying to one of the cadets from Tamil Nadu on managing stress among police personnel, Prime Minister noted that yoga and pranayam were great ways to beat the stress. He also exhorted the IPS officers and said that police stations should be kept clean and neat, and also made centers of social trust. Newsnet Desk, TD India.
In a bid to break the deadlock in Ladakh, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is likely to meet his Chinese counterpart General Wei Fenghe on Friday evening on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization ministerial meeting in Moscow. We're going to keep an eye on that. But remember, this is also the first major political contact between India and China since the PLA unilaterally changed the status quo on the line of actual control in May 2020 in East Ladakh. Well, at SCO, India has continued to maintain a very tough stance on terror. Let's take a look.
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh attended the combined meeting of Defence Ministers of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Collective Security Treaty Organization and CIS members in Moscow. Defence Ministers of all 8 SCO member nations deliberated on regional security challenges like terrorism and ways to deal with them collectively. India unequivocally condemned terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. Raksha Mantri also stressed upon the fact that India values works of SCO regional anti-terrorism structure and added that adoption of anti-terror mechanism by the SCO to counter extremist propaganda and de-radicalization was a significant move. He also spoke about the need for institutional capacity to deal with traditional and non-traditional threats while reiterating the need to deal with terrorism, drug trafficking and other transnational crimes. At the SCO meet, Rajnath Singh reaffirmed India's commitment to evolution of a transparent and inclusive global security architecture in sync with international laws. The Defence Minister also expressed India's deep concern about the situation in the Gulf region. He also called upon the nations in the Gulf region to resolve differences through dialogue based on mutual respect and sovereignty. Rajnath Singh also added that security situation in Afghanistan also remains a matter of concern for India. Rajnath Singh also held a meeting with his Russian counterpart, General Sergei Shoigu, in Moscow earlier on Thursday. The meeting covered a broad range of areas of cooperation, including defense and strategic cooperation between the two nations. Rajnath Singh briefed General Shoigu on Make in India defense program in context of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Atmanirbhar Bharat vision. Both sides welcomed the advanced stage of discussions for the establishment in India of India-Russia joint venture for the production of AK-203 assault rifles, which are considered one of the most modern weapons available for infantry forces. The Defence Minister on Friday also visited the main cathedral of the Russian Armed Forces and the museum complex in Moscow ahead of the meeting of the SCO. Earlier, Defence Minister also paid floral tributes to Mahatma Gandhi at the Indian Embassy in Moscow. Rajnath Singh arrived in Moscow on Wednesday on a 3-day visit to attend the crucial meeting of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. This is his second visit to Russia in over 2 months. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Army Chief Manoj Mukund Nirvane concluded a 2-day visit to Leh today after taking a first-hand assessment of the forward areas along the LAC, and also he took stock of the operational preparedness or readiness of our troops. Army Chief has maintained the situation along the contested line of actual control was delicate and serious, quote-unquote, while adding that Army has taken some precautionary measures to enhance security in the wake of the ongoing developments. Now, amid rising tensions with China in Ladakh sector after provocative Chinese actions on the southern bank of Pangong Tso, Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat earlier maintained that Pakistan could try to take advantage of any threat developing along India's northern borders, but warned that the Pakistani army would suffer heavy losses if it attempted any misadventure.
And resolute and will not compromise on its territorial integrity. Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla called it an unprecedented situation on the LAC and said that China has taken unilateral action to change facts on ground. He added that it can't be a business as usual and normal bilateral relations will be affected. Foreign Secretary was delivering lecture on broad canvas of Indian diplomacy during the pandemic.
It is an unprecedented situation. We have also seen that there has been an attempt to take unilateral action that seems to be an effort to change facts on the ground. I've also said that we'll be firm and resolute in resisting this. As far as we are concerned, there will be no compromise on our sovereignty and territorial integrity. At the same time, we are, as a responsible nation, always willing to talk, always willing to engage. Even in the, I would say, in the depth of the COVID crisis, we have kept our communication lines open. Our senior commanders have been talking on the ground. Diplomats have been talking to each other, both in Beijing and New Delhi.
The Chief of the Army Staff, General M.M. Narvane, concluded a 2-day visit to Leh on Friday. General M.M. Narvane arrived at Leh on 3rd September 2020 and proceeded to forward areas to undertake a first-hand assessment of the situation along the LAC. General M.M. Narvane interacted with soldiers and local commanders deployed in difficult, high-altitude forward areas. He appreciated their high morale and standards of professionalism exhibited by the units in safeguarding own territorial integrity. He also urged all ranks to remain vigilant and maintain a high order of operational readiness. Later, local army commanders briefed him on the state of operational preparedness and on the logistics arrangements for sustenance of forces in winters. General M.M. Narvane expressed satisfaction on the efforts being made to ensure operational effectiveness and capability enhancement of the forces.
ले पहुंचने के बाद मैं अलग अलग जगह पर गया था और हर जगह पर मैंने ऑफिसर्स और जेसीओ से बात की और स्थिति का जायज़ा लिया। जवानों का मनोबल बहुत ऊंचा है और वो हर चुनौती का सामना करने के लिए तैयार है और मैं यकीनन कह सकता हूं कि हमारे जवान सबसे अच्छे जवान हैं और वो ना सिर्फ इंडियन आर्मी का लेकिन देश का भी नाम रोशन करेंगे।
He also said that the situation on LAC has been critical for the last 2-3 months, adding that negotiations are on at the military and diplomatic level with China to find a common solution. The army chief also said that forces will ensure that the status quo remains intact.
पिछले 3 महीने से स्थिति नाजुकी थे। जो यथास्थिति है उसको हम बरकरार रखेंगे और इसको बरकरार रखने के लिए अलग अलग जरिए से बातचीत चल रही है, मिलिट्री लेवल पर भी, डिप्लोमेटिक लेवल पर भी, और हमें पूरा यकीन है कि जो अभी समस्या खड़ी हुई है उसको बातचीत के जरिए पूरी तरीके से हल किया जा सकता है।
Chinese army carried out provocative military activities on the intervening night of August 29 and 30th on the southern bank of Pangong Lake in a unilateral attempt to change the status quo of the LAC. But Indian troops foiled their efforts. Since then, several rounds of talks have taken place between the commanders of the two countries. Although India has clearly stated that the conditions on the border in the last 4 months are a result of the activities of the Chinese side. The ministry has also said that the situation should be handled in a responsible manner. Expressing India's commitment to peace and stability, India has said that the situation should be resolved as per the predetermined protocol. With inputs from Sudhir Yadav, Newsnet Desk, DD India.
So, in the backdrop of Indian Army taking proactive military measures in Ladakh, in focus tonight, we are going to talk about how India continues to talk tough on terror at the SCO. Remember, in most likelihood, there's going to be meeting on the sidelines of SCO summit. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh meeting, in likelihood, his Chinese defence counterpart. And on the show tonight, we are joined by Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, former DGMO, on the show to discuss India's hard talk on terror at SCO. And also, we are joined by senior diplomat, we are joined by SR Tayal sir also on the show. I'm going to quickly start this with General Sanjay Kulkarni. India has made it categorically clear that it cannot be business as usual now with China, and the statements that have come, the concluding remarks that have come from the Army Chief, at the same time our Defence Minister making it very clear at the SCO summit that India not only condemns terror, but the states which are proponents of terror is what India will continue to condemn. So, do you think overall, militarily as well as diplomatically, we continue to up the ante? And what do you think at the military level, where is this all boiling down to?
You know, over a period of time, we've realized that what China talks on, it does not actually implement at all on ground. So that's something. And as a result of which, there's a tremendous amount of trust deficit now that has developed between the two countries. It is essential for China to walk the talk, which it is not doing. And therefore, I think rightly said, the Raksha Mantri during the SCO has also raised these issues. He said that until there's a climate of trust and non-aggression, there cannot be peace or any resolution for that matter. And imagine an SCO is nothing but an 8-nation regional grouping primarily for security and defense. If that be so, why is it that we are not able to do it? And in kind of an environment that we are in, even the chief has now just gone there to Ladakh to review the situation. He has I heard that has complimented the troops for the way they are standing up to it, and he is indeed extremely happy, and we all are very happy to hear it, that the morale is extremely high and that they would do us all proud. That there is no denying the fact that they would do. Until and unless we all as an army, as diplomats also, ensure that there is constant engagement. Engagement is a must. But the Chinese just cannot engage and do nothing on ground. That is what is the way they have done the provocative military movement for establishing a foothold.
Do you think, no, sir, but do you think, you're the former DGMO now, you've had commanders level talk with China. Do you think what we saw in May, June and now there is a certain hardening of stance by India? Not that I'm indicating in any way that India had softened its stand earlier, but again diplomatically and again militarily speaking, when you have the army chief reviewing the situation there on ground, saying that the situation is perhaps tense. Very quickly.
See, I would put it this way, that China believes in strength. You have to deal with them in strength. And the fact that after Galwan and now what's happened in South Pangangso and occupation of all these heights is indicative that they have realized that India means business. And if they were to do any provocative military movement, then we are entitled to take a preemptive step to ensure that they do not succeed. The expansionism cannot carry on like this. And what the Chinese are talking about is status quo. We are not interested in status quo. We are interested in status quo ante April 2020. If that is what is acceptable, there would be peace and tranquility. Of course, we are open to talks. We can negotiate, but we can only negotiate from a position of strength. Now I feel we are in a position of strength.
All right. Let me quickly get in Ambassador Tayal here. We are upping the ante. We have seen on the economic front, sir. Would you agree? Banning Chinese apps not once but in 2 phases. And I think that is very clear. And we are again attracting a lot of FDI investments, blunting the China's unprovoked aggression at the LAC at the same time. You think this is also adding more to China's isolation, globally speaking?
I think a very clear message has been given by the government of India as well as defense forces of India to the Chinese that whatever they have done and they continue to do since March, April has dented India's relations with China and China's image globally. And there will be a riposte, both militarily, as it has been done on 29th, 30th of August, that if they come in, we will also occupy heights. So we are in a position of strength, as the former DGMO said. And also there will be economic repercussions.
Yes.
As Foreign Minister Jankar has very clearly said that there cannot be normal relations in other categories of our bilateral relations if the border remains tense. So that message is very clear. Now it is for China to understand this, absorb this, and see how far they want to go.
No, but Foreign Secretary also stating that, the Indian Foreign Secretary also stating that it is definitely going to affect our bilateral relations with China. I think there is a very, very strong message out there for China. And also this point on FDI, you think this is going to leave China red-faced somewhere? Because we are seen as a pharmaceutical capital of the world in the backdrop of pandemic and one of the top suppliers of the PPE kits across the globe. This leads China nowhere.
But China, we have to understand that it is coming under a lot of pressure from many countries, whether it is on South China Sea, they are very aggressive, whether it is Hong Kong, whether it is their suppression of Uyghurs, and now in Tibetans, President Xi Jinping has said that the Tibetan Buddhism should have some Chinese socialist communist characteristics. So they are becoming very aggressive, very shameless, and they have their own agenda. And the world has to understand that it is a new China and has to deal with it, confront it, contain it, compete with it collectively and together. And in that, I think India will have a lot of support, both from our neighbors as well as from Quad or United States or even Russia. And this is a long-term game. We have to play it very carefully and expose China's intentions to all our friends and their friends, that what China wants is to dominate Asia, East Asia and the world, and they want to harm every other country's interests, and it is better that the whole world stands up to them right now, at present.
Yes, yes. I want to, Ambassador Tayal, very quickly before I go to Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni. Ambassador Tayal, I'm sure you heard about the interventions made by Raksha Mantri today at the SCO summit. There were lots of issues that the SCO grouping talked about today, but that point on where Raksha Mantri, the timing of it, it's coming at a time when you're looking at what's happening in Ladakh, and there is a lot of buzz about Rajnath Singh's likelihood meeting with the Chinese defense minister. They're on the sidelines of the SCO summit. Reportedly, China has requested for that meeting. What do you think of this, in the sense the messaging that India is trying to send across at the SCO grouping level? India condemns terror in all its manifestations and condemns terror who are the proponents of terror. A real reference to China and Pakistan.
Very clearly, the messaging is that the terrorism is a bane for the entire world, and China is supporting or protecting those who are the terror sponsors of terror. So this has to be exposed to all the members of SCO, and I'm sure it is being done very effectively. And the second thing is that we are always open for talks, and as Raksha Mantri will have talks with his Chinese counterpart, but I do not really expect much to come of it, because the direction to the Chinese is coming from Xi Jinping, from the top of the Chinese Communist Party, and perhaps the Chinese defense minister is not so critical. He is just obeying some orders, but we must keep all the lines of communication open. Ultimately, as Foreign Minister Jaishankar said day before yesterday, the resolution of this problem can be found only diplomatically, because we have to understand why China is becoming aggressive.
Yes. Let me take this to Lieutenant General Kulkarni. Why is China repeatedly getting aggressive in the span of last 4 months?
See, primarily because China feels that this is the only time when the world is actually suffering under the pandemic of the coronavirus. They feel that economically the nations are shattered. None of these countries will help each other. All of them will find them difficult. And this is the right time now to actually do what the Chinese want. The Chinese believe in expansionism. There is no doubt. If I get 30 seconds, I'll just tell you, even if you compare the last time they went to war with Vietnam, and in 1979, even at that point of time, Jimmy Carter said, after war with Vietnam, it was very clear, you toe our line. If you don't toe our line, we will teach you a lesson. The same thing is repeated again and again. The Chinese expect that we should toe their line. Even it may be a multilateral world or whatever be it, they think that in Asia, it is they. And which is the country which can stand up to them is India. They cannot expect anyone to stand against them. It is they and they alone. It is like they are the center of the universe and all others are satellites which will be moving around them. It is not possible. Chinese don't seem to understand, and Chinese will all again and all around will keep saying that everything is that we are transgrading LAC. To them, the entire area is theirs. So this is something, this is a mindset of a communist nation which believes that if you don't toe their line, you are an enemy.
No, but is India not showing more responsible diplomacy? That is something, Ambassador Tayal, that is something added to India's growing international support amidst this whole Ladakh skirmish.
Most certainly, India is open to talks, and our stand is very open and very clear. Let us go to status quo ante as it existed in March and April. So if we have gone somewhere, we will come back. If you have come in, you go back. Who can really question that? I think India's stature has gone up, but we have to be very careful. We have to have very deft diplomacy with all the countries, and also keep our lines of communication open with China at every level, whether it is NSA, External Affairs Minister, Defense Minister, at the brigadier level. We have to deal with China. We have to convince them that it is not in their interest to have conflict with China, but if they choose...
Lieutenant General Kulkarni, does China not know this already, where they stand?
See, what happens with China, they seem, in their perception, they seem to have gone extremely strong. Much that they should know, they've opened too many fronts. They've opened a front on South China Sea, East China Sea. Now they're opening a front on Ladakh, which they've opened it for long. China seems to feel that.
No, but what we want to understand, sir, why is there a certain sense of restlessness, this unprovoked aggression coming from China again and again at this juncture? The whole attempt to disrupt status quo repeatedly.
See, the Chinese have believed that this is the right time for them to be able to exert. They have the perception of being a wolf warrior. They look at it as dead diplomacy. They expect that the nations must toe their line. If you look at it, they somehow feel that we are their neighbor and it should be only them we should be in touch with. Should you be looking at anywhere else, it is not acceptable to them. At a time when everything was going hunky-dory, suddenly you find China doing this kind of a thing at this time, and it surprises everybody as to what went wrong with China. Nothing went wrong with China. Chinese have all along been saying the same thing, that yes, in 2020, we will ensure that Taiwan becomes part of China. We will ensure that the standard of living of the Chinese will go up. Internally, he has a problem. He's able to do neither. Neither because of the pandemic, the economic policies in China are also suffering. He finds in Hong Kong there's a tremendous amount of resistance to the normal security law. Taiwan is showing eyes to it. The United States is standing with them. You find Japan is not making a headway. Vietnam and Philippines have taken up a stand to threaten China. So it finds itself suddenly cornered, and they feel if it is not done now, and when at a time when they feel that economically they're very strong, militarily they're very modernized, and what better time to do it now rather than all other nations doing it later. So it is this psyche. It is a communist psyche. Either we toe their line.
I want to ask from you, Lieutenant General Kulkarni, this is the last question to you before I take closing remarks from Ambassador Dayal. Do you think China is, very briefly, China is facing a lot of pushback from other countries, since you mentioned Taiwan and other regions, and you know, the blow hot, blow cold relationship China has with irrelevant Pakistan?
See, what happens with China, they don't now care whether they're isolated in the world or otherwise. What happened? Look at the way they're slowly, what they call nibble and negotiate. What have they done in South China Sea? They almost took the entire Paracel and Spratly Islands. Everybody kept shouting. Everybody, even in the international arbitration, they've lost against Philippines. But it doesn't bother to them. They will keep on doing what they think they are doing. They will make sure that at no point of time they feel that they will negotiate with the world at whatever time it is, and they will do bilateral negotiations. They never indulge in multilateral negotiations with anybody. And in this context, Chinese, even for Taiwan, they know as long as United States is standing with them, they'll probably hesitate for some time. And the moment they get a chance to do it, they will take Taiwan. See the statement they've said. All along, the Chinese said, peaceful reunification. The word peaceful has been dropped by China.
But you made that point. I mean, let me get in Ambassador Dayal. You said that China, as a pattern, as a habit, they would want to, or they mostly engage bilaterally and they avoid multilateral engagement. And today, if that meeting, Ambassador Dayal, happens on the sidelines of the SCO summit between the two ministers, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and their Defence Minister, it is extremely critical coming at this juncture, and sources are telling us that it was on the request coming in from the Chinese side.
It is very important because ultimately the aggression by People's Liberation Army has triggered all these incidents which started from April. So they have to be told very clearly that what do you want? If you want a conflict with India, India is prepared. But if you want peace with India, again India is more than ready and willing. So what exactly do you want? Why are you doing all this? And we have to find a new equation with China, and it is not in China's interest to have a full-fledged war with India, but if they want it, our forces...
Sooner the better China realizes this, that this is going to be in their interest to actually not indulge in the misadventurism, quote unquote. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much, Ambassador Dayal, for joining us on Newsnight, sir. And also I thank Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, former DGMO, and for joining us on Newsnight. Thank you, sir. Let's now take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the good news continues on the corona front. We'll be back. Stay with us.
पक्की होगी बुनियादें तो हंसे हिंदुस्तान होगा। पहले करो शुरुआत करो, करो तो पक्की बात करो, पहले करो शुरुआत करो, करो तो पक्की।
वंडर सीमेंट, एक परफेक्ट शुरुआत।
Thanks for staying with us on News 9. Let's now move on to COVID front and get you some good news there, which continues to trickle in because the recovery rate has reached 77.15%. The case fatality rate has further dropped to 1.74%. The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare maintains that less than 0.5% of the active cases are on ventilators and only 2% are in the ICUs. A report.
India continues to make steady progress against COVID-19. The central and state governments have been focusing on a comprehensive strategy of testing, tracking and treating. Early detection helps in effective treatment and hence testing capacity has been greatly enhanced across the length and breadth of the country. For 2 consecutive days, the total number of tests conducted were around 11.7 lakh samples, a record. 11,69,765 samples were tested in the last 24 hours. No other country in the world has done so many tests in a single day. The total tests have gone up to 4,66,79,145. Despite these large numbers of tests, the daily positivity rate continues to be less than 7.5%. There are 1,025 government laboratories and 606 private labs assessing these 11 lakh plus samples every day. The other key indicator of value is the number of patients who are recovering. The total number of recoveries has crossed 3 million, taking the overall recovery rate to 77.15%. The difference between recovered and active COVID patients is around 22 lakhs. The death rate from the virus has come down to 1.74%. Less than 0.5% of active patients are on ventilator and only 2% are in the ICU. Less than 3.5% of active patients are on oxygen support. Uttar Pradesh is seeing a surge in the number of infections. The state government has put in place tough measures to check the spread of the virus. The Yogi government intends to assess every person's health through a door-to-door survey.
स्वाभाविक है कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हम जब टेस्टिंग करेंगे तो केस भी बढ़ेगा। हमारी तैयारी पूरी तरीके से है। हमारा सरकार का, हमारे मुख्यमंत्री जी का ये सोचना है कि उत्तर प्रदेश में रहने वाले एक एक आदमी का टेस्ट हो जाए और जो भी तस्वीर है वो स्पष्ट हो जाए। और इसीलिए सरकार ने फैसला किया, चाहे वो डोर टू डोर सैंपलिंग की बात हो, चाहे और कोई भी हम लोग साधन को लगाकर और एक एक आदमी की जांच कराने की हम बात कर रहे हैं। तो हमारी प्राथमिकता है वो यही है कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोगों की टेस्टिंग हो ताकि तस्वीर साफ हो सके, स्पष्ट हो सके और हम कोविड-19 की चुनौती का ठीक से सामना कर सकें।
But life will go on and with all necessary precautions. Metro rail trials have started between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. on metro trains in Lucknow. Metro rail services will commence from September 7. The train trials will continue even on the Sunday. However, new guidelines have been issued for travelers, which have been strictly enforced by security personnel, who are undergoing special training for the purpose. Similar preparations for Delhi Metro have been completed. Meanwhile, DIAL, Delhi's Indira Gandhi International Airport, has introduced a COVID test facility on arrival of international passengers. This is the first airport in India where the COVID-19 test facility has been commissioned. DIAL has entered into an agreement with a laboratory to set up an RT-PCR testing center at Terminal 3. Results will be declared within 4 to 6 hours of the test. Travelers testing COVID negative would be allowed to continue their journey. If found positive, further action would be taken as per ICMR guidelines. It is only through aggressive testing that a scientific, coordinated public health response can be mounted to contain the virus. With inputs from Nitendra Singh, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
And now moving on to flood update across the country. First, Madhya Pradesh, where people are breathing a sigh of relief with some respite from the rainfall in the last 3 days. Relief efforts have been picking up a lot of momentum in various parts of the state of Madhya Pradesh. Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan reviewed the flood-affected villages today on Friday. He said the government would give compensation after assessing the damage caused by floods to crops and properties. And also, Chief Minister held a brief discussion with flood-affected villagers in the district. He's also assured them of their rehabilitation.
बेतवा और बेतवा से जुड़ने वाली नदियों ने भारी तबाही मचाई है। यहाँ बेतवा का जल स्तर कई गांवों की फसलें बर्बाद करता हुआ चला गया। लेकिन धान हो, सोयाबीन हो, सर्वे करा के राहत की राशि देंगे, फसल बीमा योजना का लाभ देंगे। फसल बीमा योजना की तारीख भी निरंतर बढ़ाने का काम किया है। और जिनके घरों में पानी आ गया, मकान गिर गए, गिरे मकान बनवाए जाएंगे, राहत की राशि दी जाएगी। अगर अनाज जैसी चीजें खराब हुई है, कपड़ा लत्ता बर्तन, जनता को इस कष्ट में पूरा सहयोग करेंगे।
In other news, Road Transport and Highways Minister Nitin Gadkari has said that Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has surpassed its target for construction of national highways in the country during April to August last year. In a tweet, Nitin Gadkari said, and I quote, under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has surpassed its target for construction of national highways in the country during April to August this year. He has added that even the highway development works worth rupees 31,000 crore for 744 kilometers was awarded by it between April and August despite the pandemic, which is the highest ever in the past 3 years. He's also congratulated officials of Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and NHAI as well as contractors and workers. The Narcotics Control Bureau has decided to arrest Riya Chakravarti's brother Shouvik Chakravarti and Sushant's house manager Samuel Miranda after hours-long questioning on Friday following 4 hours raid at their residence in the morning. These are the two co-accused in the FIR filed by the CBI in Sushant Singh Rajput's death case. However, NCB has arrested both of them in connection with drug trafficking allegedly linked to this case. Both are likely to be produced before a Mumbai court on Saturday. And now let's have a look at some other stories across the country.
Union Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal met the office bearers of various export promotion councils to discuss the issues concerning the country's global trade, ground-level situation and problems being faced by the exporters. Goyal said that the trade deficit is reducing drastically and our share in the global trade is improving. The Supreme Court dismissed a review petition filed by 6 opposition-ruled state governments against an order of the Supreme Court dated August 17, by which it had allowed the centre to hold the NEET and joint entrance examination in September. The Central Board of Secondary Education announced on Friday that the compartment examinations for classes 10 and 12 will be conducted from September 22 to 29. Earlier in the day, the CBSE opposed in the Supreme Court a plea seeking postponement of compartment exams for class 12 scheduled this month. CBSE said that all necessary measures are being taken. The Supreme Court dismissed the plea of former Congress leader Sajjan Kumar, who is serving life imprisonment in a 1984 anti-Sikh riots case, seeking interim bail on health grounds. The Election Commission on Friday said that the by-election to 1 Lok Sabha and 64 assembly seats spread across 15 states and the Bihar assembly polls will be held around the same time. The Sri Lankan Navy, with assistance from Indian ships, was battling for a second day on Friday to douse a major fire raging on an oil tanker carrying crude from Kuwait to India. The operation to douse the fire resumed early this morning. The Indian naval frigate INS Sahyadri joined the operations by 200 hours on Friday. Kannada film star Ragini appeared before CCB as she was summoned in a drug racket case. The CCB is investigating allegations by a Kannada film producer that several stars in the Kannada film industry are involved in drugs. Police said that the 2 people have been arrested by CCB and their connection with the Kannada film stars is being investigated.
Well, in the midst of the heightened tensions in eastern Ladakh, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh held talks with his Chinese counterpart, Wei Fenghe, on Friday evening in Moscow. It is the first high-level meeting between the two sides after border situation escalated in Ladakh. And in early May, through External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also held a telephonic conversation with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on the escalation. Singh and we are in Moscow to attend a meeting at the SCO of Defence Ministers, which took place earlier in the day. The meeting has been requested, remember, by the Chinese Defence Minister. Indian and Chinese troops are engaged in a bitter standoff in multiple places in eastern Ladakh. Teachers' Day is celebrated in the memory of former President and an academician Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, and this is the day to honor teachers for their exemplary efforts in shaping the future of the nation. This day also rewards best teachers with national awards to teachers, and this year 47 teachers from across the country are receiving these prestigious awards for their outstanding contribution and notable work.
National Award to Teachers was instituted in 1958 with the aim to award teachers in the primary and middle schools for their excellent work. In the beginning, the awards were held on random dates, but from the mid-60s, these awards began to be held on 5th of September, the birthday of former President Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan. Over the years, number of awards reached 378, and with time, lack of transparency in the selection procedure was felt, after which a change in the selection procedure was introduced. Therefore, in 2018, change was introduced in the selection process for National Award to Teachers, and the entire process was converted online and made more transparent. A web portal for inviting online self-nomination by teachers was opened, and shortlist of teachers by the Regional Selection Committee is forwarded to the State Selection Committee, which is then forwarded to Independent National Jury. The Independent National Jury then selects the best out of shortlisted candidates. Even the number of awards were rationalized to 45. Where the jury can also select 2 teachers under special category for differently abled teachers. The purpose of change in the selection procedure is to ensure that better deserving, talented and teachers undertaking innovation are awarded. 153 shortlisted candidates for the National Awards to Teachers 2020 delivered a presentation in front of the jury via video conferencing, and the jury made 47 selections for the National Awards to Teachers. The awarded teachers have not only improved and enriched school education with their determination, but also helped increase enrollments, reduce dropout rates, and adopt innovative and interesting ideas to impart education. These teachers have also helped to increase social awareness amongst children, encouraged community participation, and used effective methods of communication to promote the sense of nation building in the lives of their students, resulting in the construction of a better society. Nishant Saurabh's report, TD India.
And now coming on to our PIB fact-checked segment. In an effort to guard against fake news being circulated on various platforms, we now bring to you our segment on fact-checking and mythbusters. This is a claim which is being made in an advertisement that any person who takes the yoga teacher training course from Bharatiya Pradyogik Prashikshan Sansthan, he or she will be given a diploma certificate by Ministry of MSME and Ministry of Ayush. But the fact check has found out that the advertisement that you see on your screen is misleading and fake, and it's untrue. The claims are not right. The Ministry of MSME and Ministry of Ayush are not associated with any such course, nor do they provide government certification to any such course as claimed in this advertisement. Let's now take a look at what all is happening across the globe. The World Health Organization does not expect widespread vaccinations against COVID-19 until the middle of next year, stressing the importance of rigorous checks on their effectiveness and safety. WHO spokesman Margaret Harris said none of the candidates' vaccines in advanced clinical trials so far has demonstrated a clear signal of efficacy at the level of at least 50% sought by the WHO. Moscow is all set for anti-coronavirus vaccine mass testing and public vaccination. The vaccine is named Sputnik 5 in homage to the world's first satellite launched by Soviet Union. Some Western experts have warned against its use until all internationally approved testing and regulatory steps have been taken. Russia's investigative committee has asked one of its regional branches in Siberia to probe the possibility that someone tried to kill Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. Germany has said Navalny was poisoned with a Soviet-style Novichok nerve agent and has called for the perpetrators to be held to account. Also, Russia has until now not opened any criminal investigation and said there is no evidence yet to the crime. In Beirut, rescue workers dug through the rubble of a collapsed building after the detection of a pulse to crowds hopeful of a miracle 1 month on from a devastating explosion. A specialist sensor device on Thursday detected a pulse beneath a leveled building, raising hopes that a survivor could be found more than 4 weeks after the disaster that killed about 190 people. And before we wrap up this newscast, a quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi asked IPS probationers to prioritize making police stations as social centres of trust, interacting with IPS probationers after the Dikshant Parade ceremony at Hyderabad. Prime Minister says humane face of police was at forefront during COVID-19 pandemic, says yoga and pranayama are good for all those working under stress. Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh, who is on a 3-day visit to Russia, held meeting with Russian Defence Minister General Sergei Shoigu in Moscow. Appreciating India's concern on terror, Russia has assured India will not provide weapons to Pakistan. The meeting covered a broad range of areas of cooperation, including defence and strategic, between the two countries. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh meets Chinese counterpart in Moscow, even as India remains firm on the situation in eastern Ladakh. India maintains it can't be business as usual. Foreign Secretary says that bilateral relations will be affected. Army Chief concludes his Ladakh visit and appreciates Army Chief concludes his Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on the sidelines meets his Chinese counterpart at the SCO. Meanwhile, moving on to situation in Ladakh, high morale and standards of professionalism. Army Chief concludes his Ladakh visit and appreciates the high morale and standards of professionalism exhibited by Indian Army, says our troops are vigilant and alert. Supreme Court rejects review petition of 6 opposition ruled states against the court's August 17th order, allowing National Testing Agency to hold NEET and JEE exams in September, says exams will go ahead on the dates allotted. Narcotic Control Bureau arrests actor Riya Chakravarti's brother Shouvik Chakravarti after questioning Sushant Singh Rajput's former manager Samuel Miranda. Also questioned in the case, NCB conducts raids at Riya, Shouvik and Miranda's residences. Pakistan continues with its nefarious plans to support terrorism. Security forces gunned down 3 terrorists in Patan area of Baramulla district of Kashmir. Search operations underway. With a high number of patients getting cured, India's total recovery surpassed 30 lakh with over 77% recovery rate. Case fatality rate further goes down to 1.74%. Over 11.70 lakh tests have been done in the 2 consecutive days, with total tests near 4.7 crores. Well, with that, we wrap up this edition of News Night on Doordarshan. We'll be back tomorrow, same time. Stay with us meanwhile. Namaskar.